The fluorescent lights of the supermarket flickered, casting a sterile glow over the aisles stacked with canned goods and brightly packaged snacks. Amid the hum of shoppers and the occasional squeak of a cart's wheel, a little girl stood frozen near the cereal boxes, her small hands trembling as she clutched a box of Frosted Flakes. Her eyes, wide and haunted, darted toward the end of the aisle, searching for something, or someone. She wasn't just picking out breakfast, she was sending a signal, a silent cry for help that only one person in that crowded store would notice. Her tiny fingers brushed against the edge of her worn jacket, tugging it down to reveal a small, deliberate gesture, 3 quick taps on her elbow, then a pause, then 2 more. It was a code, a secret she'd been taught in a moment of desperation, and now, her heart pounded as she prayed someone would see it. Across the store, Officer Daniel Harper, off duty and grabbing a quick coffee, caught the movement from the corner of his eye. His instincts flared, and without hesitation, he set his cup down and followed her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of a single moment to change a life, please hit that like button, drop a comment, share this story, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Your support helps us share more stories that inspire hope and humanity. The little girl, no older than 8, moved through the supermarket with a careful, practiced grace that didn't match her age. Her name was Lily, though no one in the store knew that yet. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, strands sticking to her tear-streaked cheeks. She wore a faded blue jacket that was too big for her, the sleeves swallowing her hands, and her sneakers were scuffed, the soles worn thin from too many miles. To the casual shopper, she might have looked like any other kid tagging along with a parent, but there was no adult by her side. Instead, she lingered near the shelves, her eyes scanning the crowd, her small body tense as if braced for a storm. The signal she'd given, 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, was something she'd learned from a school counselor months ago, during a hushed conversation in a quiet corner of the library. It was a code for kids in trouble, kids who couldn't speak up, kids like Lily who carried secrets too heavy for their small shoulders. She didn't know if anyone would recognize it, but she had to try. It was her only way out. Officer Harper trailed her at a distance, his heart thudding with a mix of curiosity and dread. He'd been a cop for 12 years, long enough to know that kids didn't act like this without reason. His eyes flicked to her hands, noting the way they shook as she set the cereal box back on the shelf, only to pick up another, repeating the motion as if buying time. He scanned the aisle for an adult who might be with her, but no one seemed connected to her. The shoppers around her were absorbed in their own worlds, checking prices, arguing over brands, or scrolling on their phones. Daniel's gut twisted. He'd seen too many cases where kids slipped through the cracks, their cries for help drowned out by the noise of everyday life. He wasn't in uniform, just a plain gray hoodie and jeans, but his training kicked in. He moved closer, keeping his steps casual, his eyes sharp. Lily glanced over her shoulder, and for a split second, their gazes locked. Her eyes were a storm of fear and hope, and in that moment, Daniel knew he couldn't walk away. Lily's life hadn't always been like this. She remembered days when her home was filled with laughter, when her mother would sing off-key while making pancakes, and her father would lift her onto his shoulders, pretending she was a rocket ship blasting off to the stars. But that was before the accident, before her father's car skidded off the road one rainy night, leaving her mother a widow and Lily a shadow of the girl she'd been. Grief had broken her mother, piece by piece, until she was a stranger who spent her days lost in bottles of cheap wine and her nights screaming at walls. Lily learned to tiptoe around her mother's rage, to hide the bruises under long sleeves, to make herself small and invisible. School became her refuge, but even there, she couldn't escape the whispers of classmates or the pitying looks from teachers who didn't know how to help. The counselor, Ms. Rivera, had been the one bright spot, the one who'd taught her the signal, who'd promised that someone, somewhere, would see it and understand. But Ms. Rivera had moved away, and now Lily was alone, carrying the weight of her mother's unraveling and the fear that one day, the blows would land too hard. In the supermarket, Lily's movements grew more frantic. She didn't know if the man in the gray hoodie was safe, but she'd seen him watching her, his eyes different from the others, not distracted, not indifferent, but focused, like he saw her. She clutched another box, her fingers brushing the signal again, her heart hammering so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. She didn't know how to ask for help outright, words had failed her too many times. Her mother was in the store somewhere, likely in the liquor aisle, her cart already heavy with bottles. Lily had been sent to grab cereal, a task meant to keep her busy, but she'd seized the moment to try her signal, to reach out to a world that had turned its back on her. The store felt like a labyrinth, each aisle a potential dead end. She didn't know where her mother was now, but she could feel the clock ticking, the minutes slipping away before she'd be dragged back to the car, back to the house that smelled of stale alcohol and broken promises. Daniel kept his distance, but his mind raced. He'd seen the signal before, during a training session on child welfare. It wasn't widely known, a discreet code used by some schools to teach kids how to ask for help without drawing attention. The fact that this girl knew it meant someone had recognized her situation before, had tried to help, but clearly, it hadn't been enough. He scanned the store, looking for signs of an adult connected to her, a parent, a guardian, someone who might explain her fear. His eyes landed on a woman in the next aisle, her cart filled with bottles of vodka and whiskey, her movements unsteady, her voice sharp as she muttered to herself. Daniel's stomach sank. He'd seen this before too, parents lost to addiction, kids left to fend for themselves. He didn't want to assume, but the pieces were starting to fit. He moved closer to Lily, careful not to spook her, and crouched down near the end of the aisle, pretending to check a price tag. "Hey, kid," he said softly, his voice low enough not to startle her. "You okay?" Lily froze, her hand mid-signal, her eyes wide with terror and something else, hope. Lily didn't answer, but her body language spoke volumes. She backed away slightly, her small frame curling in on itself, but she didn't run. Daniel stayed low, keeping his posture non-threatening, his voice calm. He didn't push, didn't demand answers, just waited, giving her space to decide. Lily's mind was a storm of conflicting impulses: run, hide, trust, scream. She'd been let down so many times, by teachers who promised help but never followed through, by neighbors who looked the other way, by a system that seemed to care more about paperwork than people. But this man was different. He wasn't rushing her, wasn't yelling, wasn't pretending she was invisible. She took a shaky breath and tapped her elbow again, 3 times, pause, 2 times. Her eyes locked on his. Daniel nodded, a small gesture, but it was enough. He understood. He stood slowly, keeping his hands visible, and said, "I'm going to stay right here, okay? You don't have to say anything. I see you." The next few minutes were a delicate dance. Lily moved down the aisle, her steps hesitant, as if testing whether Daniel would follow. He did, keeping his distance but never letting her out of sight. The supermarket felt like a pressure cooker, the air thick with the weight of what might happen next. Lily's mother appeared at the end of the aisle, her face flushed, her eyes glassy. "Lily," she snapped, her voice cutting through the hum of the store. "What's taking so long? Get over here." Lily flinched, her small body shrinking, but she didn't move toward her mother. Instead, she looked at Daniel, her eyes pleading. Daniel's heart clenched. He knew he had to act, but he had to be careful. He wasn't in uniform, didn't have his badge on him, but he had his phone and years of experience. He stepped forward, keeping his voice steady. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Daniel Harper," he said, pulling out his ID. "I just need a moment to talk about your daughter." The confrontation was quiet but tense. Lily's mother, whose name Daniel later learned was Karen, bristled at his words, her defensiveness rising like a wall. She insisted Lily was fine, that they were just shopping, that he had no right to interfere. But Daniel saw the fear in Lily's eyes, the way she hovered just out of her mother's reach, and he knew he couldn't let this go. He called for backup, keeping his tone calm to avoid escalating the situation. Karen's protests grew louder, drawing curious glances from other shoppers, but Daniel stayed focused on Lily, giving her small nods to let her know he wasn't leaving her. When his colleagues arrived, they took Karen aside, and Daniel crouched down to Lily's level again. "You're safe now," he told her, his voice soft but firm. "I saw your signal, and I'm going to help you." For the first time, Lily's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of relief. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Social services stepped in, and Lily was placed in temporary foster care while her mother was evaluated. Daniel visited her whenever he could, bringing her small things, a stuffed bear, a coloring book, to make her feel safe. He learned her story, piece by painful piece, the accident that took her father, the mother who spiraled into addiction, the bruises she hid under her jacket. Lily was quiet at first, but over time, she began to open up, her words tentative but growing stronger. Daniel worked with social workers to ensure she was placed with a foster family who understood her needs, who would give her the stability she'd been denied. He also connected with Ms. Rivera, the counselor who'd taught Lily the signal, and together they advocated for her, making sure she wasn't just another case file. Lily's mother was given a chance at rehab, a small hope that she might one day be the parent Lily deserved, but for now, Lily was safe, and that was enough. Months later, Daniel stood outside a small house with a bright yellow door, watching as Lily ran across the lawn, her laughter ringing out as she chased a butterfly. Her foster parents, a kind couple with warm smiles, waved from the porch. Lily was different now, her eyes brighter, her steps lighter, her smile no longer a rare thing. She still carried scars, both visible and hidden, but she was healing, one day at a time. Daniel felt a lump in his throat as he watched her, knowing that a single moment in a supermarket had changed everything. He'd been in the right place at the right time, and she'd been brave enough to send her signal. It wasn't just a rescue, it was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, a small act of courage could light the way to a new beginning. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of kindness and the strength of the human spirit, please like, comment, and share this video. Your support on Kindness Speaks helps us tell more stories like Lily's, stories that show how one moment can change a life forever. And before you go, please leave a comment below. Tell us what moved you most about Lily's journey or share a story of kindness that's touched your life. We read every single one.